Okay. I know that the audio was low after the 30th slide. We'll see what to do for the next class. I just wanted to try today so that we know, how much the volume has to be boosted. We'll take care of that. And also, I just wanted to say that the chandas is going to be very, very different for every verse. So I've tried my best to do a recording so that, you can get familiar with the verses. This is not a professional recording, so you just have to make do with it. We can't do much beyond that because the chandas really varies quite a bit. I just have a list and maybe I can share with somebody, but it is very, very difficult because almost every verse starts switching the chandas. So we'll continue with the class now. सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् परं वरिष्ठं ब्रह्मिष्ठं परमानन्दरूपिणं परमार्थानन्दयतिं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्. Okay. So the student had actually asked 7 questions in verse 25. Right? That's the verse there. Ko nama bandhaha, katamesha agataha, katam pratistasya, katam vimokshaha, kosavanatma, paramahka atma, tayor vivekaha, katameta duchyatam. So the 7 questions were asked in verse 25 and the teacher begins to answer. So first he introduced the answer to the 7th question, which is Atma Anatma Vivekaha Katam. So how to discriminate or demarcate the Atma and Anatma? So answering the 7th question basically will require certain background understanding of what is Atma, what is Anatma, etc. Right? So if you have to answer question 7, 5 and 6 have to be answered. Right? So 5 and 6 are Anga of the 7th. So after introducing the answer, just briefly in the 7th question, the teacher enters the answer of the 5th question. What is Anatma? Kaha asau Anatma? So that's the question. We're going to discuss for a long time about this question. So I introduced this in the last class also. Panchikritebhyo bhutebhyah stulebhyah purvakarmana samutpannamidam sthulam bhogayatanam atmanah avastha jagarastasya sthularthanubhavo yataha. And then I also talked about the features of the Atma, just to introduce what the Atma is. And we said it is 5 aspects rather than 5 features. We discussed all of that. And that consciousness is the Atma, the 5-featured or 5-faceted or 5 aspects bearing consciousness is the Atma according to Vedanta. Then what about the body? The body is Anatma, mind is Anatma, sense organs are Anatma. You name anything, whatever we know conventionally, they are all Anatma, made up of matter. But blessing that Anatma body-mind complex is the all-pervading spiritual principle, right? The transcendental principle, that consciousness, the all-pervading consciousness. Thus, every individual, right? Each one of us is a mixture of Atma and Anatma, matter and spirit. So a mixture of the transcendental Atma and the empirical or transactional Anatma. Spirit and matter mixture. So one is tangible, visible, and studyable, right? We can feel, touch and feel. And another is intangible, invisible, and unstudyable. Very difficult, abstract, right? So Vedanta wants to teach us first discern that there are 2 distinct things, Atma and Anatma. Because even differentiating or discerning is going to be difficult because one of them is an abstract principle. So we have to learn to claim first that I am this Atma, the spirit, the consciousness, and I need to understand everything else is anatma, and I'm using the anatma for transactions. Exactly like wearing a costume in, say, a drama. You go to the green room, right? And then you remove. So similarly, anatma basically can be a kanchukam. A kanchukam is a word used in Naishkarmya Siddhi by Sureshwaracharya to indicate an overcoat or a coat or a costume, right? So it is basically a coat to be used. So it is wonderful. But the moment, right, suppose you assume that the body is the overcoat and you're wearing the body, the overcoat, to do your transactions, right? It's fine as long as you treat it that way. The moment you become the body, then the problems of the body get transferred, and then you get into huge samsara problem. So that is what was said in Shloka 24. Ajnana yogat paramatmanastava hyanatma bandhas tataeva samsritihi tayor vivekodita bodha vannihi ajnana karyam pradahet samulam. So misidentification is a problem. Thus, Atma, the consciousness principle, right, the normal person wrongly understands as a finite entity. So therefore, from an Ajnani angle, the same Atma is called Jivatma. Whereas from a Jnani or a Vedantic perspective angle, the same Atma is called Paramatma. So when we mistake the self as a limited being, we call it as Jivatma. When we understand the self as limitless, the same thing is called Paramatma. And this Atma is using the Anatma medium as Kanchukam, an overcoat for all the transactions. And about this Anatma body, I will talk first, is the message of the Guru. So we look at the body in a particular way, right? Because modern science has been looking at it, anatomy, physiology, etc. The Vedantic angle is not very different, but you will see where it is really different, right? So two types of divisions are there from a Vedantic perspective. One division is called Shariratrayam, the threefold bodies based on the grossness or the fineness or texture, right? So one is fine, second is finer, third is finest. So we call it gross body, subtle body, subtlest of the body, right? Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram. So thus, based on the fineness, Acharya is going to discuss the three layers of the body, right? Then he will discuss the very same three bodies from another perspective, right? From a functional classification. Kosha Panchakam or Panchakosha. So Shariratrayam is one classification. Kosha Panchakam is another classification, right? Whatever be the classification, it is the same body. It is all Anatma. So first he wants to talk about the grossest body of all, right? Which is our body. So to understand the shloka, we need a little bit of more background information. Those of you who have completed Tattva Bodha and Introduction to Vedanta, I'm sure you will find this very easy because it's just a revision. But otherwise, you really have to go back and, read those parts of Tattva Bodha again. Go through the slides, right? So in the case of modern science, right, we have theories around cosmology, creation, etc. So this is basically Vedic cosmology, right? Modern science has its own cosmology. It says universe started with a big bang some 13 billion years ago, etc. And it was matter or energy from where it gradually evolved, right? Veda also talks about the evolution of universe in a slightly different manner, or I would say it's quite different, right? If the world has to evolve, it says it has to evolve out of something. This even science agrees, right? Matter can never be created or destroyed. Same with energy. Energy can become matter, matter can become energy, but nothing can be created or destroyed, right? So here also we say it cannot, the creation cannot evolve out of nothing, right? So you just can't do that. And so if that were the case, then in the kitchen, if you just keep the vessels and go away, the next day your food should be ready. Doesn't work like that, right? So out of the seed alone, a plant comes, a tree comes, etc. Right? So that seed version of the universe is called Maya in Vedanta. Right? Very simple. This Maya doesn't have any big, mystic meaning. It's such a simple thing, right? The whole universe must have existed in the seed form, and that is called Maya. At least to understand this much, I think Vedanta is simplifying it quite a bit and saying the seed version of the universe is called Maya. And many names are there for Maya. That is why it becomes a little confusing, but we will stick to Maya now, right? So out of the material seed, the entire creation gradually evolves. So what does it mean? Before creation, two things were there according to Vedanta. One is the consciousness principle, which is eternal and all-pervading. That spiritual principle was there, right? And it was, it is, and it will be there always, right? And then the universe, the material universe, was there in the seed form called Maya. And out of the material Maya, the universe evolved in two stages. Just as a seed becomes a plant and then the plant becomes a tree, similarly, from the universal seed, first a plant-like creation came and then a tree-like creation comes. So Vedanta talks about the evolution of the first 5 basic building blocks of the universe, which are called elements, as in chemistry, where we have so many elements, right? In Vedanta Shastra, they talk about only 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. So the 5 elements evolve in 2 versions. In the first stage, the subtle version evolves, which is not available for perception by sense organs. They are called Sukshma Bhutani, the subtle version. And from that, the Sthula Bhutani, the gross version of the same subtle version, evolves. By gross, we mean Indriya Gocharam. That means perceptible to the sense organs, right? So water we see, earth we see, wind we are able to feel, space also we can discern. We know that there is space in the hall, etc., right? So Indriya Gocharam means perceptible to the sense organs, right? So Indriya Agocharam means not perceptible to the sense organs. So Sukshmam to Sthulam, subtle to gross, right? First it is Sukshmam, then it becomes Sthulam. So first it is not discernible, then it is discernible with the Indriyams, the sense organs. So the 5 elements thus evolve out of Maya. They are Anatma, matter or energy. And the elements combine and form varieties of things in the universe. We'll see that later, right? So out of the gross elements, the gross universe comes. Thus, we've got the evolution of the subtle elements, the subtle universe, evolution of gross elements and gross universe. And as the subtle and gross universe evolve, our own subtle body as well as gross body also evolve, right? So the subtle body will be talked about later. We'll try and see it just after the Sthula Sharira. So first here, the Guru talks about the evolution of the gross universe, right? Or the gross body. And gross means it is bhautikam, right? Bhutebhyaha jatam. So it is all material, elemental, physical, right? So idam sthulam panchikritebhyaha stulebhyaha bhutebhyaha purva karmana samutpannam, right? Very beautiful, easily understandable. The physical body, idam sthulam, right, is a body, is a product formed out of the 5 gross elements, right? It occupies space and it has a lot of space inside also in the stomach, etc. And air is there in the form of breathing, right? And fire in the form of temperature. Even in the coldest of the weathers, our temperature is maintained. A lot of water is there in the body. And then, of course, we have the earth also, the solid earth, all the minerals are there. So therefore, body is Pancha Bhautika Shariram. And then Samutpannam Sthula Shariram, right? Pancha Bhautikam. It is made out of the 5 elements. In fact, the first time you realize that the entire, the body, when after cremation, if you happen to collect the ashes, right, then you realize that such a big body, which is say 70 plus kgs or 60 plus kgs, it reduces to, even with the bones, it is less than 1 or 2 kgs. And without the bones, it's just ash in, few grams, right? So all of this has gone back to the earth and the Panchabhutas, right? So here he says, Purva Karmana. So the 5 elements are the raw materials that go into the production of the body. But we must observe that each body, although it is produced by the same raw material, there is so much difference between the bodies. The color is different, the race is different, right? The gender is different. So many differences are there between our bodies. So then what is that makes each body different? There must be a Vishesha Karanam, right? There is a general cause and we definitely need a special cause. So Samanya Karanam and Vishesha Karanam. So the common generic cause and a specific cause. That's why some people are born with congenital issues, etc. Right? So that specific causal factor is here referred as Purva Karmana. So the karma of the Jivatma, as the common man understands, has been done or earned in previous janmas using another body, because the body is just a costume. It can be put on and off. Therefore, I've had different costumes before, and only in human birth, the free will can be exercised, right? And not in an animal or a plant body. So in our past human bodies, whenever we have used or abused our free will, we have done good and bad actions. Some of those actions have produced results already in earlier janmas, but some could not produce results, and all those accumulated punyam and papam called purva karmana are there for every Jivatma. So here Purva Karmana refers to the old Papam and Punyam. And out of that huge bundle of karma, a set of karmas become operational in the current Janma. It has matured, right? And like these FDs mature at a certain time, it has matured and it has become Prarabdha Karma, right? We're not going to get into the details of this. We have seen it in Tattva Bodha and we'll see at a later point in time. So here, obviously, in Vivekachudamani, Acharya assumes that we have gone through Tattva Bodha or the equivalent, right? So, Prarabdha Karma determines the present body, and if my Prarabdham is good, I will be born with a good, healthy body, with a long life, in a good family, etc. So, Idam Shariram Samutpannam, this body is born. Then what is the function? Bhogayatanam. He says the body serves as a temporary residence for the Jivatma, the duration being the whatever is determined by the Prarabdha Karma. It could be 100 years, or if it is a tortoise, it could be much longer, even 300 years. So the shortest duration in general, relatively, is for the Stula Shariram. When you go to Sukshma Shariram, it is longer, and Karna Shariram is much longer life. We'll see what it is. So only the physical body has got the shortest lifespan among the three bodies. And the duration of each is determined by the type of karma. So we remain in this leased body, leased house called the body, and the lease payment, right? It is karma, right? So there is one shloka, in fact, Paunav Punyena Kritaha. This has been bought, or this has been earned through the punyam, this human shariram, and we are exhausting it, right? So it will automatically be deducted every day, and the moment the prarabdha comes to zero, the person is off. And remaining in the body, using the body as its residence, what does the jiva do? The jiva contacts the external universe, and only if this body residence is available, the jiva can contact the world. So if the physical body drops off, even though the other two bodies are there, it cannot contact the external world, right? So that's the fifth capsule of Vedanta, right? It is not because the body is, the consciousness is not there, or the Atma is not there, but because the medium of transaction is not there, right? So therefore, Shankaracharya says, Bhoga Ayatanam. Ayatanam meaning residence, right, or abode, for experiencing pleasures and pains by contacting the world. Right? Good experience means we are encashing good karma. Bad experience means we are exhausting our bad karma. Right? So either way, we are encashing our own karma. So we alone are responsible for the pleasures and pains, and let us not blame God. God did not do this, because in fact, in one of the Bhashyams, I don't remember exactly which Bhashyam, Shankaracharya discusses so much about this karma theory, and he says why God can't be responsible for this at all, because then he would become partial. On what basis would he give somebody a better body and the other person a better house, better riches, etc.? Right? So God has nothing to do with this. He is only an administrator. He ensures that everything is done according to the law of karma. So bhoga ayatanam, body is an abode, staying in which the jivatma contacts the world and experiences pleasures and pain. And atmanaha is basically jivatmanaha here. And that is the version of the Atma that we currently know, right? Then we have this other, the other part of the shloka, which says, Yataha tasya stula artha anubhavaha jagaraha sa avastha, right? So he introduces a state of experience now, Acharya. So much he's packing into one shloka. So he's saying there are three states of experience. One is called the waking state, in which he contacts the external physical world. The second one is the dream state, in which we contact the internally projected thought world. So one is Bhautika Prapancha, the physical world. Another is Manasa Prapancha, the thought world. So in waking state, I contact the physical world through the physical body. In dream state, I don't employ the physical body. I contact the internal projected body, right? And which is through what? Through the mind alone. So if you notice, mind is required for both the Jagrat Avastha as well as the Swapna Avastha. So here also you need the mind to work, to operate in the physical world. There it is, of course, completely projected, right, by the mind and the vasanas in the Sukshma, in the Swapna Avastha. So the special additional cause or the Vishesha Karanam for the working, for the waking state, in addition to the physical body, right? So we have basically you have the special cause or the Vishesha Karanam, the physical body itself, along with the mind. So the special state associated with the gross body, because the gross body is functional only in the waking state, right? So that is the special state, and that avastha is called Jagrat Avastha. So Jagrat Avastha is always associated with the physical body, right? Mainly, and the mind, of course, operates. But physical body is solely for the Jagrat Avastha. Therefore, he says, Tasya Jagaraha Avastha. So, Tasya Avastha means Stula Sharirasya Vishesha Avastha. The special Avastha for Stula Shariram is Jagrat Avastha, the waking state, right? And the uniqueness of the waking state is Yataha, because of which Stula Artha Anubhavaha. Basically, he or she is experiencing the material objects of the world. There is experience of these objects because the gross objects are never experienced or contacted in dream, right? So in dream, every object is nothing but our own thoughts. Suppose you have a tiger chasing you in dream, that dream tiger is also a thought. And chasing you, that you is also a dream thought, right? So that is all Manasa Prapancha or Vasanamaya Prapancha. Whereas this world in the waking state is called Sthula Prapancha or Bhautika Prapancha. Prapancha meaning universe. So Yataha, because of this Jagrata Avastha, there is the experience of the waker's world. So this is the gross body, the tangible, visible body. And this body, the Sthula Shariram, as I said, is having the shortest lifespan, right? So that is the Sthula Shariram. Continuing. Vagadipancha Shravanaadipancha.
Vagadipancha Shravanaadipancha.
Pranadipancha Bhramukhani Pancha.
Pranadipancha Bhramukhani Pancha.
Buddhyadya Vidyapi cha Kama Karmani.
Buddhyadya Vidyapi cha Kama Karmani.
Puryashtakam Sukshma Shariramahuhu.
Puryashtakam Sukshma Shariramahuhu.
So we are now entering the second layer of the body called Sukshma Shariram, which is the subtle body. It is finer than the gross body. Therefore, it is intangible, invisible. And Sukshma Shariram is going to be talked about in 3 verses. 28, 29, and 30. And the Sukshma Shariram is considered to be the toolkit which contains several instruments that the Jivatma employs to contact the world. So the physical body is basically like the office which we enter for transacting. And in this office, like we have a, say, computer, a mobile, a desk, etc., right? So you have several gadgets, right? So the basically, if you see, the physical body is like the office building, right? The physical structure. And the subtle body is like the several gadgets and instruments which we use to contact the world. So in Tattva Bodha, the subtle body was defined in a very simple manner by saying it consists of 17 instruments or tools, right? Just to remind you, Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Pranadayah, Manaschaikam, Buddhiraschaikam, Saptadasha Kalabhihi Saha Yattishtati Tat Sukshma Shariram. So 5 Jnanendriyams, 5 Karmendriyams, Pancha Prana, Manaha, Buddhi, that made it 17. 17 instruments were mentioned. Here in Vivekachudamani, Acharya presents it in a different pattern. He classifies them into 8 groups. And each one he calls a Puri, right? So Puri literally means a city. So a city can be understood as like a fortress, right? Entire Sukshma Shariram is compared to a powerful fortress within which Jivatma, the master, is seated, just like a person sits on a chair in the office behind a control panel and operates all the various instruments. So Jivatma is the master and Sukshma Shariram is the fortress which he operates and with which he can protect himself also. So, for example, if the karma is negative, he can use the tools of the Sukshma Shariram, do some noble actions and generate punyam. By generating punyam, he can neutralize the negative karma. So, Sukshma Shariram is thus like a fort which helps the Jivatma. Therefore, it is called Puri or Puram. Right? So, Puri Ashtakam, Vagadi Pancha, Shavanadi Pancha. Right? Since 8 groups are there, it is called Puryashtakam. And what are the 8 Puris? It is said here, Vagadi Pancha first, Shavanadi Pancha, Pranadi Pancha, Abhramukhani Pancha, right? Then you have Buddhyadi, Avidyapi, and Kama, Karmani, right? We will see what these are, right? So, Vagadi Pancha is 5 basically in we have to look at it grammatically. There should be no space between Vagadi and Pancha because it is a Samasta Padam. Shavanadi Pancha also should not have a gap, right? And Pranadi Pancha also should not have a gap. And Pancha Brahmukani, right? So Pancha Brahmukani. So it should be, it's all of there are Samasta Padams. It means it's a group of 5. So they're all compound words. Vagadi means the 5-fold instruments of actions. Basically, Pancha Karmendriyani, starting with Vak, is referred to as a group here as Vagadi Pancha. Right? So he's just mentioning Adi. Vak is speech. Right? So basically, all this is explained in Tattva Bodha so nicely because Tattva Bodha is a text which takes the trouble of almost explaining all the terms that we would be actually using, right? So that is why Tattva Bodha is basically so important and critical, right? So that is in Tattva Bodha, you see Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upastha. This is the Karmendriyani, 5. And then we're not going into the detail, right? It is basically the hands, the speech, the organ of movement, and then you have the waste removal system, all of them, right? So, and the generative or the reproductive organ, that is Pancha Karmendriyani. And so now very important is they all belong to the Sukshma Shariram. We are not talking about the physical part, right? We are talking about the subtle body, the Sukshma Shariram. The physical part is called the Golakam and this subtle part is called the Indriyam, as I said earlier also. So this is Vagadi Pancha is Pancha Karma in Pancha Karmendriyani. Then Shravanadi Pancha. So they are the Pancha Jnanendriyani, Shrotram, Tvak, Chakshuhu, Rasana, Granam. So they all receive messages or stimuli from the external world, right? So Shravanam means organ of hearing, all of them, hearing instrument and others, right? All the sensory, the Jnanendriyams here are being referred to, right? So Shravanam, basically is, yeah. So Shravanam means the hearing capacity, the ears, right? And you have to remember that these are all referring to the powers. So the power of the ears, then power of the eyes, the power of the nose, granam, rasana, the power of the tongue, knowing taste, etc. Twak, skin, right? And skin is the only jnanendriyam which pervades the entire body, so that the body can be protected. We don't even think about these things. The only jnanendriyam which covers the entire body, pervades the entire body. So that's the biggest organ in the body, if you can call it, right? So except for nail and hair, all the others are covered by skin. So the entire body is pervaded by skin, tvak indriyam. So this is pancha jnanendriyani, shravanadi pancha. Then pranadi pancha, the fivefold prana shakti, right? Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. And when we are breathing, the breathing is tangible. It is indriya gocharam. But the air we breathe has prana shakti. The shakti is not visible. So that prana shakti is there in the body, but it is very difficult. You cannot see it, right? But it is because of that the body is surviving, right? So here Shankaracharya is referring it to as one group, but actually there is prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana. So prana corresponding to the respiratory system, apana to the excretory system, right? And vyana the circulatory system. So if you see, it is samana samikarana kara vayuhu. So one of them is for digesting, right? And then you have the circulating of the blood happening because of one of the pranas. Then there is udana prana. The primary role of udana is supposed to take the sukshma shariram away from the body at the time of death, right? Udana prana. So the sukshma shariram is basically within the stula shariram now, and it is keeping everything together. But the moment the prarabdha karma is exhausted, the sukshma shariram has to leave the stula shariram, the physical body, and take up another physical body, which may be a human body, or it can be a plant, it can be an animal, or it can even be a celestial body. Yatha karma, yatha shrutam. So we don't believe that it is random. It is because of the karma that we have done, and it is law of karma comes into play, right? So at the time of death, the sukshma shariram has to be pulled out. It has to be separated from the sthula shariram, and that special function is taken care of by udana prana. So urdhva gamanavan utkramana vayuhu. We saw all these definitions in Tattva Bodha. So that's why Swamiji actually says, please get by heart the Tattva Bodha. If not, at least get familiar by reading it many times, right? So these are the Pancha Prana, and each set of 5 is one group, one puri. Jnanendriya Panchakam, Karmendriya Panchakam, and Prana Panchakam. The 4th one is Panchabhramukhani. Here, Abhram, right, is actually space, right? So space and others. So even in Gita, we saw a verse, Kachinno Bhaya Vibrashtaha Chinnabhramiva Nashyati, right, in chapter 6. So that which holds water and gives rain, right? Apaha bhibarti iti abhram, right? So the clouds which hold the water, and the cloud itself is held in the sky only. So space is the one that's holding the cloud. So space, and then you have vayu, and all the elements are referred to here as pancha abhramukani, right? So here they're basically abhrama and others, abhram and others. So gross elements are basically visible. Here we are talking about the subtle elements, the sukshma elements here. So all of these we don't see, right? So the next fivefold, so there are 4 sets of 5s here, and then you have buddhyadi chatushtayam, right? So buddhyadi chatushtayam, why is it said 4? Right? Chatushtayam means group of 4. Why? Again, we saw in Tattva Bodha that the internal organ, which is called Antakaranam, which the Shastram refers to as Antakaranam, it actually has different functions, right? And whenever it performs a particular function, it is given a particular name. Like a person, Suppose he is a chairperson of some particular, say, board, then he is called a chairperson. But he may also be the manager of something, right? So he may be called a manager also. So depending on what he is doing, depending on the function, the name might change. So similarly, Antakaranam is only one, but it is classified into four based on its fourfold functions. So first one is Buddhi. That's the intellect, the rational function. So discriminatory function. Then Manaha, the mind, is associated with different functions like doubting, emotional, right, coordinating, etc. So that's the second one, that's the mind. And then we have, of course, Chittam, that is the memory faculty, right? So that's the third aspect of it. And then, of course, the fourth aspect of it is Ahankara, basically the identifying one, the ego, right? Like, for instance, when the eyes are seeing, I say, I am seeing. When the ears are hearing, we say, I am hearing, right? So that is the Ahankaraha here. That is basically the self-identifying principle is called Ahankaraha. So the memory faculty is Chittam. So these four put together become Buddhyadi Chatushtayam, which is the fifth Puri. Right? So Puri Ashtakam we have to see. So we've seen 5 here. So Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Pranaha, Pancha Bhutani, and Antakarana Chatushtayam. The next Puri is Avidya. Right? So self-ignorance here, if you see, very important subtle difference here. Here the word avidya here refers to misconception, especially self-misconception in this case. Now, yesterday or day before yesterday, there was a question on this. I think the last class or the class prior to that, there was a question on this and I spoke about it. Please remember that we are refining the definitions as we go along, as you start understanding better and better. So here, this avidya is referring to the self-misconception, and to differentiate it, we call it karya avidya. Okay, so we refer to it as adhyasa, right? So here we are referring it as karya avidya. You have to remember that. So self-ignorance is called avidya, which is karana avidya. Self-misconception is called karya vidya. So here it is karya vidya which is being referred to, right? So self-ignorance, we are going to come to it. We are going to classify it under karana shariram. Since ignorance is placed in karana shariram, the result of that, which is self-misconception, is going to be in sukshma shariram. Therefore, this karya avidya is self-misconception, claiming I am Jivatma instead of claiming I am Paramatma. So this is the sixth Puri avidya. Right? And of course, apicha is a conjunction. Then you have Kama, the seventh Puri, the desire. The desire which drives a person to do karma. Right? And that alone sustains the Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam cycle. So the desire makes me pedal the samsara chakram endlessly. Right? So desire makes me do karma, action, right? And I want a house, I want to build this, I want a career, I want to do this, and sometimes I end up compromising on values. So desire is responsible for karma, which is punyam and papam, which is the next one, right? So the eighth puri is karma, which results in punarjanma. Thus avidya, kama, karma is perpetuating samsara. Therefore, right, all desires, right, are responsible for this. So you have kama and then karma. So seventh puri is kama and the eighth one is karma. And karma can refer to both actions as well as the result of the actions. So punya, papam, good and bad actions and good and bad results in the form of punyam and papam is called karma. So punya, papa, dvayam you can take as karma, and that is also placed in the sukshma shariram, especially the fructifying karma. That karma which is not fructifying in this janma will be deposited in the karana shariram. But here this is to be readily available. So this is in sukshma shariram for us to exhaust, right? So karmani, kama and karma both together, right? So it's a dvandva samasa here. Kamascha, karmascha, kama karmani. Right? So Kama is the seventh city and Karma is the eighth city Puram. Thus all these 8 factors put together is called Puryashtakam. And Puryashtakam Sukshma Shariram Ahuhu. The group of 8 is called Sukshma Shariram. Ahuhu is a verb. So I have just put Rishayaha in the bracket. Rishis declare this as subtle body, which is finer than the gross body. It is invisible and survives the death of the physical body. Not just one, but many physical bodies it survives. So the same subtle body exists throughout the current creation. It only takes multiple bodies in succession, dropping the earlier one, right? It has got a very, very long life. And at the time of Pralayam, when the whole universe dissolves, right? So that is when it will get back into the third body, which is Karana Shariram, which will continue once the world has resolved, right? Then it continues into the Karana Shariram. So when the next Shrishti happens, the Karana Shariram is there and it survives the Pralayam and it continues in the next Shrishti. Like this, it goes on and on and on. The universe appears and disappears, but the Karana Shariram survives. So it is the hardest to, destroy, right? Srishti after Srishti after Srishti, it will continue. This will go away only under one condition, right? So we'll see that later anyway. So Karna Shariram will go away in the wake of self-knowledge. So that alone is moksha or liberation. So the physical body perishes at the time of death. Subtle body goes at the time of pralayam. Causal body will resolve only at the time of liberation, right? Then what happens to Atma? We should know by now. Atma is all pervading. It is never subject to coming and going, etc. So it is always there, right? So let's continue. Idam shariram shunu sukshma sangitam.
Idam shariram shrunu sukshma sangitam.
Lingam tvapanchikrita bhuta sambhavam.
Lingam tvapanchikrita bhuta sambhavam.
Savasanam karma phalanubhavakam.
Savasanam karma phalanubhavakam.
Swajnanato nadirupadhiratmanah.
Swajnanato nadirupadhiratmanah.
Swapno bhavatyasya vibhakyavastha.
Swapno bhavatyasya vibhakyavastha.
Swamatra sheshena vibhati yatra.
Swamatra sheshena vibhati yatra.
So the subtle body is very unique because it is talked about by the Shastra alone. Modern science never accepts this, right? Very important to note this. Its existence, it doesn't accept. Its survival, it doesn't accept. Rebirth, it doesn't accept because modern science doesn't have any instrument to see this. They only see the visible brain and they call it the mind, right? There is no separate mind. And that is why they don't even accept psychology as a proper science, right? They will accept neurology. They will accept anatomy. They will accept chemistry, right? Biology. But they will not accept a mind which is other than the brain. Shastra alone says brain is different. It belongs to Sthula Shariram. Mind, right, is different. It belongs to Sukshma Shariram, which the scientists cannot see. And we don't have an instrument, right? Because we cannot see the mind. We don't have an instrument to see it. It is our limitation, not the non-existence of mind. We accept the mind because for us, Shastram is the Pramanam. And if you remember, we discussed about Shraddha. And at that time, we said Shastra Pramanam is an independent Pramanam. When others cannot reveal, other Pramanams cannot reveal something and it is revealed through Shastra Pramanam, we take it and that is Shraddha, right? Therefore, we have to remember this. When we come to subtle body, we can discuss this only based on the scriptures. So we have left the modern science behind. If we ask, what is the proof? We say Shastram is the Pramanam. So very, very important to note this. So Shunu idam sukshma sangitam lingam shariram, right? Shunu. So now and then the teacher will say Shunu to basically you listen, right? So Vedanta being abstract, off and on the student may feel bored or may doze off, right? So always this shunu will come, right? Which means wake up. Idam shariram sukshma sangitam. This subtle body is inaccessible to modern science and it's called subtle, right? Basically, the very word subtle indicates it's inaccessible to any other pramanam other than Shastra. It is apaurushaya vishaya. Sukshma shariram is apaurushayam, alaukikam. So, shunu, may you listen to this. Sangitam, named Sukshma shariram, subtle body. Lingam to a panchikrita bhuta sambhavam. Lingam means that which reveals, evidences, manifests the consciousness principle by borrowing consciousness. That is Sukshma Shariram, Lingam, an indication. So this subtle body, which is made up of the subtle elements, has got all the tools for transactions. And the subtle body being material in nature, like the gross body, it doesn't have any consciousness of its own, nor can it generate consciousness of its own. Therefore, we should remember that it has got only borrowed consciousness, exactly like moon borrows light from the sun. So the consciousness in the physical body, in the subtle body, and in the causal body, all of them are borrowed only. But where from each borrows varies, right? There is an order of borrowing. Karana Shariram, being the finest, it borrows consciousness directly from the Atma. The Sukshma Shariram borrows from the Karana Shariram, and the Sthula Shariram borrows from the Sukshma Shariram. See how beautifully they all come together. So, having thus borrowed consciousness, the Sukshma Shariram becomes sentient and it in turn gives sentiency to Sthula Shariram. This is the Sahastric explanation. So, Sukshma Shariram therefore becomes very important to keep the Sthula Shariram alive and functional. The very quality of our life depends on the proper functioning of our indriyams, which are part of Sukshma Shariram only. So thus the Sukshma Shariram is very important for the living being, right? And once the Sukshma Shariram quits this Sthula Shariram, along with the Karna Shariram, it will quit, the physical body is dead. So thus body is a living being only because of the presence of the Sukshma Shariram. Sukshma Shariram alone makes the very living being possible. So, moreover, living beings alone have self-awareness. This self-awareness, which is also due to Sukshma Shariram, is very, very important because the self-awareness alone helps us to discover the absolute and all-pervading consciousness. In Mandukya Upanishad, the word used for self-awareness is Eka Atma Pratyaya Saram. That continuous self-awareness, right, is the clue, is the lead for the spiritual seeker to make further inquiries and to know the absolute consciousness. So the self-awareness is basically an empirical awareness in the Sukshma Shariram. Through that alone, we discover the absolute consciousness. Therefore, self-awareness is possible only because of Sukshma Shariram. And since it helps in knowing the Atma, Sukshma Shariram is called Lingam, right? So Lingam means that which reveals, evidences or manifests the consciousness by borrowing consciousness. So in short, that which helps us to know the Atma, Lingam, Lingati meaning it is to know. So the dictionary meaning is basically to go, it is Gatyartha, but in Sanskrit, the Gatyartha, Gati, the going is also used for knowing, right? Gatyartaka dhatunam jnanartakatvat. So here it is Lingati, which is a Bhuvadigana dhatu, which is what is indicated here. So the Sukshma Shariram is called Lingam because it helps us know the Atma. So it gives me the lead to know the Atma. So Shunu idam Sukshma Sangitam Lingam Shariram. Right? So Nyapakam. You have to remember that it is the revealer of the absolute Atma. And Lingam Shariram to Apanchikrita Bhuta Sambhavam. So to differentiate Sukshma Shariram from Sthula Shariram, the gross body is born out of gross elements. The subtle body is born out of subtle elements. Apanchikritam meaning ungrossified. You might remember I discussed Panchikritam in the Tattva Bodha classes. So Apanchikrita Bhuta Sambhavam means it is not grossified. Savasanam Karma Phala Anubhavakam. So the Linga Shariram has got so many Punya Papa Karmani born out of our past actions, right? So buddhyadi avidya apicha kama karmani, we saw in the previous verse, right? So punya papa karmas, especially the prarabdha, is stored in the sukshma sharira. So here Shankaracharya says not only prarabdha karmas are there, but prarabdha vasanas are also stored in the sukshma shariram, because every karma produces punya papa and a vasana also. So vasana is the tendency to do the same karma. The result of the karma is called karma phalam. The tendency to do the same karma is called vasana. So the karma phalam will affect me by giving situations, right, as a bhokta to experience it. The vasanas will influence me as a karta by holding me to the same thing. Okay, a gross way of looking at it is when I take coffee for a few days, right, that result of caffeine will be there. In addition to that, there is a vasana which is asking me to go and drink coffee every day, right? So that is the vasana which is influencing me. Looking at it positively, if we develop this interest in the scriptural learning, right, this vasana is going to follow us even in case we don't get Videha Mukti and we are not Jivan Muktas in this Janma. As Krishna says, there is nothing called, being lost like scattered clouds, etc. You will have a Janma in a much, much, much better and congenial atmosphere, right? So the Vasana influences the karma, right? The same type of karma to be done. So therefore, we have Prarabdha karma also, we have Prarabdha Vasanas also. And because of that alone, different people have got different inclinations. You will see some people are very young and even in childhood, they are great mathematicians, etc. So that's all Purva Janma Vasana. So karma affects the bhokta, vasana influences the karta, right? So if we are interested in spirituality and we are interested in attending these classes, that is also because of vasana only. So savasanam karma phala anubhavakam. These are all objectives to sukshma shariram, right? So this sukshma shariram alone converts the jivatma into karta and bhokta. Right? Through its vasanas, it makes me a karta, and through the karmas, it makes me a bhokta. So jivatma becomes a karta and bhokta only when he identifies with the sukshma shariram. So it is very clear that sukshma shariram alone makes me a jivatma, a karta, bhokta. It is through karma phala anubhavakam, it makes the jivatma an experiencer by making it a bhokta, an experiencer of karma phalam. All the punya papams accumulated over so many janmas, right? So it can give us pleasant experiences. Sometimes it can give us unpleasant experiences. So it anubhavayati, makes us experience. And this sukshma shariram is called upadihi. You see, upadihi Atmanaha. Upadihi is a technical word, right? And let us take a simple example so that we understand. Now, there is X in the proximity of Y, right? And makes Y appear differently. X is making Y appear differently. X is called Upadi, Y is called Upahitam. So, Upadi makes Upahitam appear differently, right? So let's take a simple example. There is a red flower and there is a crystal. The red flower makes the crystal appear reddish in color. So the red flower is Upadi and the crystal, right? The colored crystal becomes Upahitam, right? So Vedanta gives this example, the colored object in the proximity of a colorless crystal. So in the proximity of that colored object, or here the red flower, the colorless crystal appears colored, right? So the colored object, the flower is called Upadi, crystal is called Upahitam, right? So in fact, Sureshwaracharya gives a very beautiful example, a scientific example of keeping a straight rod partially in water in a glass bowl, right? And when you look at it from outside, it appears bent at the point of contact, right? The straight rod appears bent because of the water. So the water is the Upadi and the rod is the Upahitam. So similarly, all the three sharirams are called Upadi for the Jivatma. Why are they called Upadi? Because the Atma, which is originally Paramatma, in the proximity of the three sharirams gets distorted and appears as Jivatma. So the original Atma is Akarta, Abhokta, a non-doer, a non-enjoyer. But in the presence of the Sukshma Shariram, it becomes Karta and Bhokta. So the distortion of akarta into karta, abhokta into bhokta, immortal into mortal, limitless into limitless, limited. This distortion is caused by the Sukshma Shariram. And as long as we don't know that Sukshma Shariram is only an upadhi, we will conclude that we are indeed Jivatmas. So therefore, Acharya says, Swa Ajnanataha Anadihi Upadhihi Atmanaha. Right? So because of self-ignorance, ignorance of a real higher nature, and because of the ignorance of the nature of the upadhi, the Sukshma Shariram has distorted our real nature, which indeed is Atmanaha. Therefore, Paramatma appears as Jivatma. Swa Ajnanataha, because of self-ignorance, ignorance of our real higher nature, Upadhihi Bhavati, the Sukshma Shariram has become a distorting Upadhi for this Anadihi Atmanaha, the omnipresent Atma. Right? So in Naishkarmya Siddhi, basically, Swamiji asked this question: what should you do if the rod is bent under the water? What should we do to make the rod straight? Right? General tendency for us is to jump immediately and say, take the rod out of the water. Right? Then the bent rod will become straight. No, that's a wrong answer. You actually need not do anything. Just understand that water is only an upadhi. It only makes the rod appear bent. What a beautiful example, right? Just discerning that the water is a upadhi. That's all. Our mind will then treat the rod as straight only. It hasn't become bent. So we actually need not do anything except have a clear understanding that the distortion is just an illusion. So a jnani is one who only uses the Sukshma Shariram. He only clearly knows that as long as Sukshma Shariram is there, I will appear to be a finite being. But I am only appearing to be a finite being. In reality, I am the infinite Atma. He will know that. I need not do anything to change that illusory state. Jnani is one who has understood. He's understood this and he continues to function as Jivatma. In the presence of the Sukshma Sharira, he continues, he goes on with his normal activities. Exactly like seeing the rod, bent rod in the water, and just as understanding that the water is upadhi. That's all, right? So he knows this, and as long as I understand this, he remembers I appear as Jivatma for all others because of the Sukshma Sharira Upadhi, but I will, right? I was Paramatma, Aham Brahma Asmi, right? So the Sukshma Shariram here is an Upadhi, and the Upadhi, where did it come from? Anadi. It is eternal Upadhi, right? Because even if the Sukshma Shariram gets dismantled, right? The Karana Shariram is still very much there. So in which all the future Sukshma Sharirams are potentially there. So in the next Srishti, another Sukshma Shariram will come, right? So it is going to continue endlessly, right? So it all started with Ajnanam or ignorance, and the ignorance started Anadi Kala. There is no beginning. The Sukshma Shariram also is always there in either in active form or in potential form. Okay. So the best translation, right, for Upadhi is Upadhi, the conditioning or the illusory factor. Swa Ajnanataha Atmanaha Anadihi Upadhihi. So Swaswarupasya Ajnanataha, right? So basically not knowing, right? And the who you are, it just continues like that, right? So what we'll do is we'll stop here because it's going to get into more deeper area. I'll take it up in the next class. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.